What's up, my streaks and geeks? Coming to you today from room 200 here at PHS with the first ever episode, and maybe the last, of History Matters Baby. And I have something to confess here. I tried to do this 2 days ago. I sat in this classroom for 2 hours and attempt after attempt, probably at least 10. I attempted to make this video and failed miserably. It was terrible. I was awful. So I left a little bit frustrated, actually a lot frustrated, and I went home and I mowed the grass. I got on the John Deere. I put on my headphones and listened to some Civil War podcasts. That's kind of what I do. And while I was mowing, I had a couple of thoughts. I do some of my best thinking while I'm mowing on the John Deere. But thought number one was, well, it was a quote from Lincoln. And let me just share that quote with you. And that quote, right here, the words of Abraham Lincoln: "My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure." I thought about that quote, and I don't want to let Abraham Lincoln down. And no, I was not content with my failure. I was, like I said, I was frustrated, extremely. So I thought about that. And ain't no quit. All right, Abraham Lincoln, no quit. And then the second thought was, this classroom is completely different without you in it. There was no energy. There was no give and take. And the thought struck me that you are the essential ingredient in this classroom. The content doesn't change. I'm here, the teacher, but y'all matter. So, to make myself feel a little bit better about this situation, I moved my revolving book stand over here, and I've got my giant domino back here and my 5-gallon bucket. Come on, how can you teach American history without a 5-gallon bucket? Sitting here without you over there, this is a different animal. But I'm going to try again. May fail miserably again, may have to go mow the grass again. But let's give it a shot and see what happens. So, my favorite chapter of the entire school year is the 1850s. So what I want to do with you today and over a few more episodes, I would like to just hit the highlights of this crucial decade in the history of us. There are some that argue this is the most important decade in the history of us. But let's take a look at it and just see what happened during these 10 years leading up to the American Civil War. Make myself a little bit smaller. And let's get to the gathering storm. I'm having technical difficulties. I'm not quitting. Come on. We need to have a gathering storm. We're not having a gathering storm. Something should be happening. But no. There it is. There's the storm, kids. Sounds like a pretty big storm, too. Kind of cool thing is, it's actually raining outside right now. And speaking of cool, yes, I made that cloud gray and that red streak red. Go red streaks. Yes. So let's talk about the 1850s, which again are sometimes called the gathering storm. Look at all these events. Again, we're just going to chip away at these. We're not going to get too in depth. Just kind of like hit the highlight reel of the 1850s. But as we do this, and you look at the bottom of the 1850s, and this is in chronological order. I'll come back to that in just a minute. It culminates with the election of Lincoln in 1860. But before we get rolling with this, I mentioned chronology. I'd like to read you something from my favorite Civil War historian, Mr. Gary Gallagher. I was watching a video of a talk that he gave in February before all this craziness happened in Richmond, Virginia, and he was talking about the students that he's taught through the years at Penn State and at the University of Virginia, and he was talking about their lack of ability to understand chronology in American history. So let me read to you what he said. And I'm going to put my glasses on for very dramatic effect. Or plus, I really can't see it. So he said they are, his students, what he's noticed through the decades, they're especially bad at chronology and don't really appreciate the things actually happened in a sequence, and often because one thing triggers the next, one and then the next. They're not just random things that fall into place and then just go along. There is a chronological reality in history. Now that's good stuff right there. Again, Gary Gallagher. There is a chronology, and as we look at these events, one after the other, there is this sequence. It's kind of like, you know, I wish I had like some dominoes to show you. Maybe some dominoes where we could maybe, can you see? Look, got some dominoes right here by Abraham Lincoln, who inspired me. He inspired me early with his words about not quitting. Thanks, Abe. If we look at our dominoes, if this is the chronology, the sequence of events, what happens what if I just take that one out? You know, I can knock them over. I could, but look. Oh, that was a fail. Did you see that? That was not supposed to happen. But it did happen. You see, this is kind of like class. And I realized this while I was mowing the other day, that I tried to make these videos perfect, but I realized that my classes were never perfect when you were in here either. I messed up all the time. Now you saw that right there. Now you're probably right now going, all right, I'm not watching any more of this YouTube channel. This guy's terrible. Let me just try it again. Because again, I failed, but I'm not content with that failure. I'm going to try it again. By the way, that was not planned. I really didn't think those would all fall down, but they did. I'm going to space them out a little bit farther this time. Maybe this is the reason why students aren't very good at chronology there for Professor Gallagher, is because they don't have teachers very good at setting up dominoes. You know, I'm not going to space them out any farther this time. I'm just going to go ahead. You get the point. You get the point. At least I hope you do. Okay, let's just move on. I think that's the best thing to do right now. But wait, before we move on from this slide, there are some major points, that some themes that I just want you to think on as we go through today's introduction to the 1850s and as we progress through these episodes and we take care of these events. Firstly, how many of these events have something to do with the institution of slavery? All of them? None of them? 3/5 of them? Now, some of you just got that. Number two, did the folks in the 1850s, did they know that a civil war was coming 10 years later? Good question. Think on that one. Number three, was this civil war inevitable? Was it bound to happen? And if so, was there a certain event, perhaps on this list, that was a point of inevitability? Or if not, if it wasn't inevitable, how could it have been avoided? Number four, was this civil war, was it caused just by a bunch of blundering politicians and leaders through the 1850s? Great question. And then my last one that I want you to think about, and let's circle back to number one. This is one of my favorite ones to think about with the Civil War. Would this Civil War have happened would there have been 11 slave states that seceded without the issue of slavery? Now, I have some thoughts about these 5 that I just mentioned, but I want you to think about those as we go through. So think about those. Next slide. True or false? Here's something for you to think about. A lot of the founding fathers thought slavery was on its decline and would eventually fade away from the American landscape. And by the founding fathers, I mean Washington and Adams, Jefferson, who's standing on our Louisiana Purchase. And then, of course, you have J. Madd and J. Mon. Did they think that slavery would eventually go away? I think that actually was a pretty common thought, but I'm going back to the 1770s and 1780s and into the 1790s, especially with the Constitution. And there was something in this Constitution about the slave trade and how it was going to go away in 20 years, and it did in 1808. I know that Jefferson thought that the ending of the slave trade would also help with the eventual ending of slavery. But the answer to this question, I believe, is true, but they were wrong. So slavery is going to skyrocket as we end the 1700s and go into the 1800s. And the question is, why? Why did slavery skyrocket and boom as we go into the 1800s? Well, maybe it had a little bit of something to do with a box with a crank. That's right. And no, it's not a Jack in the Box. This thing's freaked me out. See, I'm sharing my thoughts and feelings with you here on this video. So, box with a crank. Some of you are thinking of it right now, and that would be one of the most important inventions in the history of us. And it was a giant domino right there, not a little domino in American history. Huge domino in American history, and that invention was, I'm not good at sliding this chair, and that invention was this. And again, some of you are thinking it's the cotton gin. Cotton gin, of course, invented by Eli Whitney in the middle of the 1790s. It's a very simple machine, actually. It came in different sizes. Some so small that they would fit on a desktop, others so big that you couldn't even fit them through my classroom door back there. But the cotton gin completely changes the history of us. So let's just take a look at a field of cotton. Something you see in our neck of the woods on a regular basis? No, we see soybeans and we see corn. Cotton's going to be grown in the deep south due to climatic factors. So how does this box with the crank change things? Well, cotton has seeds in it. It's like an apple. An apple has seeds in it. Well, cotton has seeds as well. It would be nice if I had a piece of cotton to show you. Let's look in the 5-gallon bucket. There's all kinds of stuff in that 5-gallon bucket. Seriously, how can you teach American history without a 5-gallon bucket? So I am going to, let's make me a little bit bigger. There are, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are at least 10 seeds in this cotton. And yes, this is real cotton. Almost every year in class, there will be a student ask me, is that real cotton? Yes, real cotton, as opposed to fake cotton. But I'm going to, for educational purposes, hey, did you like my student voice there? Is that real cotton? That's not how my students sound. I'm going to pick out a seed from this cotton. Still working. Success. That, boys and girls, is cottonseed. Now, did I do that quickly? No, I didn't. And I mentioned there are several more in here. So before the cotton gin, how were cotton seeds removed? By hand. And it was a long process. In a day's work of work, it could take all day to get a pound of cotton. Cotton gin, I'm going to change that. Speaking of changing, let's make me smaller again. So how did this, wait. Just had an idea. You go back. Make me bigger again. What if, even though the climate is not ideal here in South Central Ohio, what if I planted this? Yeah. I want to look in the 5-gallon bucket again. I got dirt. I have a cup of dirt from a coffee cup that perhaps may have come from a Hampton Inn. Okay, that was bad. It was real bad. I'm going to take the cottonseed and I'm going to plant it. I'm going to put it in there, cover it up with some dirt, cover it up, and I'm going to go ahead, because I know so much about horticulture. It needs water. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little bit of water in there. And let's just see if we can cultivate some cotton. I'll make sure this gets outside from time to time. And we'll see if this dude grows over the next week or so. See, that's reason enough right there to tune back in to these episodes of History Matters Baby, just to see if this cotton plant grows. Now back to the cotton gin. How does it work? It is a box with a crank. Turn the crank. A handle crank turns a cylinder with wire teeth. The teeth pull the cotton past the grate. Okay. And then as you turn, look at the cylinders and the belts and such. So it grabs a hold, the wire teeth grabs a hold of the cotton, forces it under the grate, and then expels it out the other end. Simple as that. What happens? Seeds are removed. So this simple box with a crank completely changes the history of us. By the way, in case you did not know, well, FYI, the word gin stands for engine. But is there an actual mechanical engine in there? When we think of engines, we think of like a car engine or something like that. Or maybe the engine on your four-wheeler. This one's, it's still an engine. There's no gasoline. Hand pound. So, cause and effect of the cotton gin, process cotton quicker, okay? Which means we got a linear graph situation going on here, which means more money, which means farmers are going to want to buy more land, which means what happens to the demand for slaves? The demand for slaves is increased. And to further illustrate this, there are all kinds of good history things on YouTube. Not so much this, but I found this little video. I'm going to share it with you. Here we go.
To fly a rocket ship, you need to be an optimist.
This video is not about rocket ships.
No astronaut.
Here we go. History Illustrated. Hold on.
In this History Illustrated video, we're going to discuss an invention called the cotton gin. The cotton gin was invented by a guy named Eli Whitney.
From the north, by the way.
Simple purpose. Eli Whitney built a machine that you could put some cotton in. You could turn the crank right here, and it would pull all the cotton out and leave the seeds. I'm going to put seeds here behind in the box. So the idea was pretty simple. For Eli Whitney, he wanted to separate seeds from cotton. So that's what the invention did. Unfortunately, though, it also had a side effect. So I'm going to write an effect here. What farmers realized is that they can make a lot more cotton if they bought more cotton gins. And if they bought more cotton gins, they would need more slaves. So a very unfortunate side effect was that slavery would increase because the cotton gin made it much more profitable. I'm going to put that word here, profitable, to grow cotton. So profitable meaning there's a lot more money to make because of the cotton gin. Therefore, people would need more slaves.
Nice job, Hillary. History Illustrated. Maybe that's something that I need to look up on YouTube. This question. How many subscribers, how many viewers do you think that this video is going to attract? I'm thinking maybe 12. I think 12. I think that's, I will be impressed if there are 12. Let's move on. Oh, this next slide. I hope you are seated right now, wherever it is that you're watching this, because this next slide, yeah, I need to make myself smaller. Get out of the way. Yeah. You ready for this? Here it comes. In 3, 2, 1, bam! Yes, line graphs. I know, not just one line graph, 2 line graphs about cotton production and slavery. And at first glance, what do you notice about those line graphs? One to the left and the one to the right, they almost mirror each other. Cotton production from 1800 to 1860. Look at that. 1800, 1810, 1820, 1830. It's like, whoop, thing almost goes straight up. and the growth of slavery, again, it did not start to decline as we got into the 1800s. It very clearly also goes whoop, just like cotton production. Now, I wonder if there's a connection between these two. Maybe a little bit, just a little bit. We're down to the last couple, 3 slides here. Some of you are thinking, good. Maybe a lot of you are thinking that. But I'm going to go way back to circa 1988. This map about slave concentration in 1820 comes from a textbook of mine. I'm just going to show you the next slide too. Slave concentration 1860. Now back to 1820. But I got these maps from a textbook of mine, book I'm currently reading called The False Cause, about something known as the lost cause, how the Civil War was remembered by some folks afterwards. Currently reading that. I'm reading it very slowly. My wife sometimes makes fun of me. I am a slow reader. There's nothing wrong with that. Here's another fantastic read, Batman's Guide to Being Cool. Well, let's get to this textbook. America, Past and Present. Seriously, this thing is 30 years old. I had this back at the Ohio State University. OH! There better be some Iowans out there. Go Bucks. But I've had this textbook for a long time, and these 2 maps, that they came from that. So let's look at what's going on with slave concentration in 1820. The darker areas, higher levels of slave concentration. And if you're looking at Virginia and Carolinas and Georgia, and then Louisiana, and some of you may be thinking, well, where's Florida? Where's Texas? Well, what about the rest of some other parts of the United States like California? Well, it's 1820. Those parts have not been added yet. I mean, Florida's coming with the Adams-Onis Treaty, and the others will get added as well. Hello, Manifest Destiny. But I want you to notice the map of 1820 and then the map of 1860. Look what happens with slave concentration there in the South during this 40-year span. Let me back up. 1820, 1860, 1820, 1860. This is kind of like when you're at the eye doctor getting an exam and they're asking you that kind of question. 1820? Look specifically at 1820. Look at parts of Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama and Mississippi. Look at those parts. Look right here. And now look at those same parts in 1860 in Georgia and specifically Alabama and Mississippi. There are big gaps there in 1820. these, wait a minute, you know what'd be better? If I just had a slide that had both these maps side by side. There it is. That's what you were thinking, and you probably should have been thinking that. But why? Why is it in 1820 that some of these areas of the Deep South are completely empty? But then 1860, on the eve of the Civil War, those gaps are gone. And there's some of the places with the highest concentration of slavery in the United States. Very interesting. So the answer to that question, what's up with those gaps? Why are there no longer gaps in 1860? The answer to that question is, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not telling you today. You're going to have to tune in for, you don't want you to think about it. Think about it. Think on it. Little geographical thinking here. Some historical geography. Think about it, and then you have to tune into the next episode, then I'll tell you. Now, would I really do that? Would I really do that? Yeah, I just did. Say, I'm not going to tell you. But what I am going to tell you is this. As we conclude, one, did this in one take. One, thinking about you. That's, well, along with Abraham Lincoln's dandy quote, thinking about you made all the difference in the world. It really did. And this thing is called, this YouTube channel, it's called History Matters Baby, but you matter too. I absolutely miss you guys and love you guys. And they're starting to get some ticks in this room, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up real quick. I'm gonna wrap this up, I think, in a very fitting way. Today, as always, it is a great day to be a Piketon Red Street. Yeah, I think we should stop now before I break something. See you guys.